Hello, and welcome back to Cooking with Arnold, the only show that terminates your hunger. On today's episode, we're making lemon cookies. Arnold? What the heck are you doing in my office? Why is there flour everywhere? And why are you in an apron? Nah, you can't sneak up on me like that. Also, I love my apron. It says, "Get the chopper," like a knife. Okay, okay, that's pretty good. I get it, but listen, I've got a podcast to record. What about my cookies? You can make them in the kitchen instead of my office. Yeah, alright, I'll do it. Now, time to take these lemons and crush them to a pulp! Hey, you're still here. You got to turn your oven to 350 degrees. Okay, I hate to do this, bud. Boys, take them away. Now! Stop it! Subscribe! Subscribe if you want to live! Oh, that plug was nice. I didn't expect that. Alright, well that wasn't my best Arnold impression I've ever done, but hello everybody! And welcome to the Saved as Draft podcast, the only show where I, Bradley Ramsey, talk to you about the craft of writing, what I'm working on, and why you should care. Welcome to episode 5. That's crazy to think about. Due to technical issues and my neighbor for some reason honking their horn at random intervals, this is running late. So I apologize, but I must say to those who were asking when the episode's coming out, you made my day. I'm so happy that people are actually interested in listening to this, and I just want to shout out that I appreciate you very much. Neither of you were pushy in any sense of the word, or anybody else that's waiting on the episode. Just really cool that people are interested, so thank you. All right, so last week we talked about how that was our 500 subscriber special. Well, I made a joke about getting to 1,000 in the next week. That didn't happen, but we did get to 700, and it's still going up, so still not bad for a week. And to be honest, growth should slow as things go on, and it needs to be sustainable. So I want people to know that I didn't cash in on my 15 minutes of fame and then bail on the community. Not happening. When I first kind of went viral with that one post, there were just a couple responses that insinuated that I was just trying to basically farm subscribers. And it's like, no, as you can see, I'm actually out here, doing the work. So, 700, very exciting. Speaking of milestones, we hit 10,000 page views on my publication this last week. Can you believe that? And that was right at the 30-day mark. That number also continues to go up by nearly 1,000 views per day. It's crazy. Poetry in particular seems to do really well. But even that long Devine story, Isadora's Final Stand, that I published this last week, did really well. It took a little bit longer to get to the same number of reads, but it got there. Alright, and also starting this week, we have been doing Flash Fiction February. This is a really cool event where the idea is to write a flash fiction up to 1,500 words every single day based on a prompt. And this last week we started it. I tried it myself a few years ago, and I only made it to, I think, the second week before I just, burned out or ran out of steam or what have you. I don't foresee that happening this time around because we have an incredible group of people in the subscriber chat who have been jumping in, doing the prompts, reading each other's work, really supporting stuff. I mean, honestly, it's everything I've ever wanted from a writing community. It's phenomenal. And everybody knows Wild Nebula, who shows up in the chat. If I don't get the prompt posted by noon, you can bet that she'll be in there to remind me, which I do appreciate, and she knows that I do. So yeah, I'm using prompts from the Freewrite deck, which is a deck of cards that have different prompts based on 8 different genres, and I kind of shuffle them and pick one or 2 or 3 and then choose from that which one I think will be the most interesting to do that day. Today in particular, Mina, one of my subscribers, gave me the idea to fan them out like tarot cards and just pick the one in the middle. So that's how we got today's, if anybody's curious. I'm also using handwritten wildcard prompts that are courtesy of my girlfriend Sarah. We did our first one this last week, and the way the wildcard prompts work is you are allowed to do any genre you want with them. So it kind of gives people some flexibility in between us switching genres with each prompt. So thank you to Sarah. I have a few more of hers lined up for the rest of February that are pretty cool. Yesterday it was your favorite author's new book gives you headaches when you read it, or every time you read it, something like that. We had some really cool entries for that. So again, if you decide to participate, definitely tag me so I can check it out. As my subscribers know, I make time to read stories every single day. And as soon as I'm done, I will leave a comment, and then I will restack it with my review. So I do my best to get it out there and in front of as many eyeballs as possible. As people who listen to the show know, every single week we do shout-outs for featured stories and writers that I've interacted with that week. Well, this week is special and very exciting because our featured writers are going to be the folks who entered into my official Flash Fiction Devine Challenge. For those who are not aware, Devine is a fictional realm of fantasy and science fiction where a number of my stories take place, and I've been building it for a few years now. It's been obviously a big thing on Substack, bigger than it's ever been since I joined. And there will be stories coming out still in that realm, in addition to a full series called The Order of the Pawn. And so this last week, as part of our fantasy flash fiction prompt, I offered an additional challenge to write a story using that prompt that's also set in Devine. And so I had almost 10 people actually write stories and submit to the challenge. Today I'll be revealing the grand prize winner as well as 2 runner-ups. The grand prize winner is going to get their own character based on the writer of that story, and I will work with them directly to kind of develop the character, the backstory, the name, stuff like that. And that character is going to be one of the members of the Order in Order of the Pawn, and they will play a pivotal role in the series. So get excited about that. We'll be revealing the winner later in this episode. And to the other stories that won runner-up, obviously they'll get honorable mentions. And I do plan to use elements from both those stories pretty heavily in the Devine series. I'll be borrowing some of the ideas that they suggested and running with those as a way to pay homage to their incredible work. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the first ever Devine Challenge Awards. I am so sorry this was supposed to have music and all kinds of other fun stuff, but I did bring along a few friends to mix up the sound of the voice here for a second. Gentlemen, you want to come on in?
Welcome, folks! We are here on the red carpet at the first annual Devine Awards. I gotta say, Bob, the outfits tonight are stunning.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Okay, I will. The outfits tonight are stunning.
Oh, okay, guys, this is not what we talked about. Ugh, get out. I'll just narrate it myself. Oh, sorry about that. You think you know someone, and they come in here with their ridiculous commentary. My apologies. So we had 9 total entries to the Devine Challenge this week. And as I said before, to qualify, all they had to do was follow that flash fiction prompt, which was what she heard, she drew, and what she drew came to life. As long as you followed that prompt and you set the story in Devine reasonably within my existing lore, your story counted. So we had 9 total. So let's go through a quick overview of the nominees. Our first nominee is a story called Within the Twisted Whispering Woods by Wild Nebula. This story told the tale of a refugee from the city of Giant's Bane in my first Devine story, and how they went to a place called the Twisted Whispering Woods after escaping before the city was invaded by the Varak Horde. It's here that they uncover a sentient wand that uses magic to bring to life anything the user draws. Devine fans will recall my story, A Soul Bound to Steel, which tells the story of a sentient weapon as well, but in that one it's a sword, and it was created by science and technology, not magic. So, as with most things in Devine that are on opposite sides of that equation, I'm thinking this wand and that sword are going to find themselves in a battle together wielded by different characters. Stay tuned. Our second nominee is The Unlikely Hero by Mina Howell. This story does a lot of heavy lifting for me as the creator of Devine. It introduces fairies to the realm, which I have not discussed yet. It also introduces a new forest called Titanum Forest, and it even includes a continuation of the Rot story that I introduced in my Devine tale called Fate's Witness. It's incredible that this story managed to incorporate so much within the 1,500 words, which is the testament to Mina's world-building capabilities. The main character of this piece, Solara, a fairy, will also be making an appearance in the Devine series coming soon, as I was absolutely blown away by this character, and I love the lore of the fairies. Not to mention, now I have basically a free prompt that I can use to bring back the Rot as part of that villain arc. So thank you to Mina for this incredible entry, and I'm happy to say that it will remain canon as the stories go on. Our third nominee is Singing into Silence by EMR. This story takes us deeper into the lore of the Dwarven people. It stars a Dwarven prophet and singer named Monita, and the story also debuts a new location called the Sunspear Mountains, which is a really cool name that I will probably have to borrow. Could you imagine if I finally get like a map of Devine drawn at some point? We're definitely including the Sunspear Mountains. This story also includes the lyrics of a song about Devine in it, which is really cool. The fact that people are putting so much effort into their entries for this challenge is a dream come true for me. Everyone who entered really immersed themselves in this world, and they paid so much respect to what I've built here, while also bringing their unique voice to the table. I'm so grateful. Our fourth entry is A Devine Tale, The Tragedy of the Majiri by Dawson Vandervoort. This story gives us a look into the Majiri, who I've mentioned briefly in prior Devine stories, but all that we know is that they disappeared before they could perfect a forbidden immortality spell. Dawson's amazing story here stars a Majiri girl named Lorelei. She possesses the power of creation. And of course, we know the fate of the Majiri, so Dawson's story gives us a glimpse into the hubris and greed that ultimately led to their downfall. This is an amazing entry that also perfectly represents how I imagine things would have gone for the Majiri in those final days, so it fits into the lore very nicely. Our fifth entry is The Painted Veil by T.P. Chaos. Chaos is one of the nicest, most supportive, most talented writers that I've met so far on Substack. Every single story they release is immersive, atmospheric, and superbly written. The Painted Veil is no different. This dark fantasy tale reads like a blend of fantasy and horror, following a painter named Alara as she paints a strange city landscape, a door, and perhaps a way to save her people and uncover her past. This is an incredibly well-written piece of fiction that oozes style and atmosphere, and is something I'm very proud to say is part of the Devine lore. Our sixth entry is The Forest Glen by P. Baez. This was my first story from this author, and I'll tell you what, I read it like 3 or 4 times because I was so enamored by the style and the sort of dreamlike atmosphere that it created. In this story, we visit the narrow glen in the ancient forest of Orokovis, and we visit a girl named Liss as well as her friend as they hunt a boar. Now, shortly into the story, they become hunted by a creature known as a narwhal, and this thing is scary as hell and chases them back to their village. Chaos ensues from there, but again, I have to highlight the amazing writing style here. It's incredibly unique, very lyrical, and almost poetic in the way that it flows, and it paints very vivid pictures. The whole thing feels, the way that it reads, it feels like a fever dream in the best way possible, and this author's other work has a similar style. It's incredibly cool and unlike anything I've ever seen. Definitely check it out. Our seventh entry into the challenge is Finton's Tale by Gillian Fletcher. This entry put a new spin on my narrator and recurring Devine character, Finton Marybrook. In this story, we hear about the storyteller conversing with a guest. It's almost like he's talking to you, the reader, as if you're the guest. And things start to get tense as it goes on, like you're getting on Finton's bad side. This story also reveals more about Finton's backstory, including a secret that he's hiding that's very similar to the actual lore that I was planning for him. So I thought that was really cool that Gillian synced up with me on that without us ever talking about it, obviously. So I'm definitely planning on borrowing elements of that and working it into the broader narrative. Our eighth entry is The Orphan Who Wrought by Spencer D.W. This is another author whose style that I dearly wish I could emulate. Spencer's horror stories recall some of the horror greats, in my opinion, establishing an atmosphere that's both insane and full of vivid imagery, packed with creative word choice and an unwavering commitment to both voice and tone. So you can imagine my excitement when I found out Spencer was doing a Devine story. This piece absolutely delivered. The horrific imagery comes through immediately, describing the kind of dark fantasy vibe you would get from games like Dark Souls or Bloodborne, if you've ever played those or any other of From Software's works, or even just seen those kind of graphic styles. That's how I feel when I'm reading Spencer's work, and it is so cool, and I wish I was that good at describing and world building, because it is amazing. His story is horror and fantasy perfectly intertwined, and I have to just once again say that I'm insanely honored that one of my fellow horror writers entered the challenge and did so with such expertise. It's amazing. Our ninth entry is The Mighty Quill by Andrei Kohler, and I hope I pronounced that right. This story stars a character named Jilsara, who is connected to the Majiri via a fetish that she carries with her. The story takes place in a cave, and she uses the fetish as a paintbrush for her work. We quickly find out that this little fetish that she carries around is more than it's letting on, including it possessing the ability to speak directly into her mind. This is another character that I think is extremely fascinating, and some of the implications here make it very tempting to bring her back in a future Devine story, and most likely in the series. Alright folks, well, with the music problems, I can't put in some awesome music here, but I'll give you a little drum roll. The moment you've all been waiting for is here, and if I can just open this totally real envelope, the winner of the first ever Devine Flash Fiction Challenge is The Painted Veil by T.P. Chaos. Coming in a very, very, very close second was Mina Howell's The Unlikely Hero, and our third place runner-up was A Devine Tale, The Tragedy of the Mejiri by Dawson Vandervoort. Congratulations to Chaos for the grand prize win, as well as the second and third place runner-ups. Every story that entered the challenge was incredible and unique in its own way, but these three stood out to me as part of three different scoring metrics that I used to objectively judge the stories. Those metrics included the overall quality of the writing, the compatibility with my overall plans for Devine, and how well they leveraged the existing Devine lore. So that's how I came up with our winner and our two runner-ups. But again, I have to say thank you to everybody who entered. This was overwhelmingly amazing and just so incredible for me to see after several years of working on this universe and just not really finding the audience for it until recently. So thank you. And one thing I'll say too is the reason why I chose The Painted Veil as our grand prize winner is because it really did crush all three of those rating categories for me and in my opinion. It leveraged the lore of the Mejiri to tell an amazing story on how they actually didn't die, but they were banished to some sort of other realm from the sounds of it. The idea that the Mejiri are trapped and can come back is really compelling to me because I have plans to kind of restart Devine as part of the ongoing story, and I wanted some believable ways to bring back the supposed extinct races. A little bit of a preview there for you. And, as I said earlier, Chaos's writing since joining Substack, every piece that I've read is just blows me away, and they just continue to get better. So congratulations to Chaos for the grand prize win. We're already in touch, but I will be in touch to talk to you about your character in the upcoming Devine series, The Order of the Pawn. All right, and now back to our regularly scheduled and very much long episode of this podcast. Next up is our section on This Week in Writing. Well, another week and a bunch of new stories, huh? And poems, too. I've been publishing every day, sometimes multiple times a day, so let's see what came out on The Writer's Journey, my publication, this week. First up is my flash fiction cryptid horror story, The Not Deer. This is a fun one, inspired by the Old Gods of Appalachia podcast, as well as other cryptid stories. I live near the Appalachian Mountains, so all the lore is just too much fun not to write about, and people really enjoyed this one. I've been getting a few requests to do more, and a fellow writer on Substack, Odessa Blaine, suggested Old Green Eyes as the next story, and I have something pretty cool planned for that, but, time is the biggest obstacle. Following that, this last week, I released a emotional flash fiction piece called Just in Time. This one does have content warnings attached to it for self-harm and ideation. So be warned, use discretion if you decide to read it, but it is a very special story to me. It tells the tale of a character who is about to make a very grave mistake. And it turns out that a sort of time machine device they're working on suddenly works, and a future version of themselves shows up and convinces them to rethink their decision. It's very emotional, very intense, but I think it has a really great message. So if you get a chance to check it out, Just in Time, that came out this last week. Also, of course, this last week we started up our Flash Fiction February challenge with our daily prompts. For our first prompt, on February 1st, I believe, I think I lined it up exactly right, I published a flash fiction comedy horror called Eat the Rich. This is starring a character of mine named Clive Higgins. I don't know if they mentioned his name in the story or not, but Clive Higgins is a cannibal for hire, and in this story we join him as he's recently killed and is about to prepare some fresh bodies for dinner guests that are showing up later that evening. It's gory, but it's very funny. If you don't mind the gruesome parts, you would really like it, I think. Next up, we had a new Devine story called Fate's Witness that came out on February 2nd. This is the story of Felwyn Sagestar, who is an elf that was accused of unleashing a force known as the Rot into Avondale Forest. During his trial, the elves use an artifact on him called the Chronoscepter, which sends him back in time repeatedly in the hopes that he will eventually change the past and save them in the present. Of course he won't, because in the story we find out that changing the past means killing his one true love, and as you can probably imagine, he doesn't want to do it. Next up is our second Flash Fiction February story that I published this week, based on Day 2's prompt. This story was called The Breaking of Kendathu. It is a very short Flash Fiction choose-your-own-adventure with a sci-fi twist, set on a prison planet in the far future. Also on February 2nd, I published Broken Pieces, a poem about the scars that define us, And I just want to say thank you to everyone who supports this piece, as well as all my poetry, especially my fellow poets and writers like Isabella Neshawat, V. Walker, Hazel, and others who are always jumping into my poems and appreciating them and sharing them and commenting. So thank you very much. I know I missed some people there, but those were the first few that came to mind. On February 3rd, I published Hex Code. This is a fun cosmic horror flash fiction based on a prompt using the color Very Perry. I don't want to say more than that because it's very cool in terms of its twists and turns as well as its ending. So if you like cosmic horror, take a look, check out Hex Code. Also on February 3rd, I published a poem called A Version of Me, which did really, really well. I describe it as a poem about the masks we all wear and the faces that we show the world. This one resonated extremely well with a lot of people, and I felt very happy about that, very humbled when I saw that it was connecting with people and that the message there, you know, as I like to say, my stories and poems are always tempered with hope. So I was happy to see the message come through in that piece. On February 4th, for our Day 3 prompt, I did a Devine piece called Storytime. This was about Fintan Marybrook babysitting a young elf girl named Kenadara, but she goes by Kenny. In this episode of Devine, we also meet Sarai Rashan, who's one of the only elves who escaped Avondale after the events of Fate's Witness. And also, shout out to Wild Nebula. She did a bedtime story style flash fiction for one of the prompts prior to this, and I totally got inspired by that concept for this Devine story. So shout out to Wild Nebula for giving me that idea. For the structure, at least. The Devine stuff, obviously, I added on my own. My Day 4 entry for Flash Fiction February was another horror called I Live to Serve. This was a cool story where I had the main character sort of talk to a voice in his head that he speaks to, and they kind of banter back and forth the entire story. This piece in particular is actually set in a larger horror mythos that I'm building called the Synaptic Sprawl. It incorporates our entire universe as we know it, but also many others in a web of connected parallel worlds. It's not your standard multiverse, let me say that. It does have a similar structure as other properties that have tried that, but the difference with mine is that its structure and what lies beyond it makes it really unique in my opinion. And as I continue to publish more horror stories in this universe, you can definitely start piecing together those connections that exist between all of my horror stories within the Synaptic Sprawl. On February 5th, I published another successful poem called Silence. This one is a little bit darker, a little bit sadder. It comes from a few years ago and was based on some stuff I was struggling with, but it had a really cool structure that I came up with where every stanza had to have 2 words in the last line. So you could do, 4 or 5 words in the first 3 parts of the stanza, but that 4th line always had to be just 2 words. And so what it does is it creates this very hard stop in the rhythm at the end of each stanza, and I thought it was really cool. So if you get a chance to check it out, definitely try that similar structure with one of your poems, and if you do, tag me. I'd love to see it. For Day 5 of our Flash Fiction February prompts, I wrote a piece called Wrong Place, Wrong Time. This is a comedy time travel adventure starring myself and my friend of over 20 years, James Nethery. James is an animator, and we're working together on the Chronicles of Clenchport animated series. He read the story right away when he found out that I had based it on some of our old ideas back when we were 15 and we had first met and we were writing bonkers time travel comedy stuff. So this was kind of a spiritual successor to that. And he really enjoyed the story, and I know others did too. So that was a really fun one. On February 6th, I published a new Devine tale called Isadora's Final Stand. This is written using a prompt from a few weeks back about a soldier who stumbles into a cave that takes him to a fantasy realm. As soon as I heard that, I was like, yep, that's Devine. So I did a story about the dwarves of Devine, and it's supposed to be an ancient kind of legend where they claim that a soldier from Earth showed up and helped them stop one of the old gods from escaping beneath the surface of Devine. So it's a cool story. It's pretty long. It also features the longest narrated kind of voice track that I've ever done for a story. Just over 20 minutes, actually. So if you have time or you want to settle in for a longer Devine tale, Isadora's Final Stand, highly recommend it. Next up, we have my Day 6 Flash Fiction prompt story. This one is called Hushed. And if you read my first series on Substack called Her Voice, that's going to sound really familiar. And you're correct, this is a prequel to her voice. I looked for ways to connect it to the main series, and I dropped a few Easter eggs that are meant to kind of expand the lore a little bit, including the origins of the disease. And this story does star Summer, who everyone really liked in the original series, so you can find out what was going on with her prior to the events of her voice if you check out that new Flash fiction piece called Hushed. And last couple here. Earlier today, I published a new poem called Burn the Past. It talks about moving past all the mistakes that you've made, kind of putting them behind you and taking the lessons from them and then moving forward. It's a hopeful piece with my usual combination of hopefully fun rhymes that aren't annoying, and you know, good word choice to kind of drive home some of the themes. And I know I said a couple, but that's the last one. I still haven't written the flash fiction for today. As many of you know, I am running behind. But hey, you know, at least we're recording this. That's a good start. So, thanks for sticking with me this far. We are already well over the normal, you know, time limit for an episode, but we're going to keep going. I really wanted to do all the sections this week, so no harm, no foul if you need to drop off, but we're going to keep going. So next up is our weekly topic of writing discussion. This topic is feedback, specifically how to give and receive balanced feedback. I wanted to talk about that this week. See, there's a difference between saying something is nice, offering a critique, or just plain being a jerk about someone's work. And as people who have existed on the internet, I'm sure we've all experienced some combination of all of those things, which is why this week's topic is balanced feedback, balance being the key word there. So here's the thing. People online are going to be trolls. That's just a fact of life. Some people are going to be out here literally just to say nasty stuff and try and get a rise out of you or make you feel like you're not a good writer. And let me tell you right now, and be the first to say, that just because someone on the internet said your writing sucks doesn't make it true, okay? In fact, take a look at the comment that they wrote, okay? If their grasp of the English language or whatever native language you're speaking in is worse than yours, odds are their opinion doesn't matter anyway. And here's the thing, I haven't seen many trolls on Substack, but as things grow, it's entirely possible and unfortunately plausible that these types of accounts, you know, some of which are just going to be AI bots, are going to sneak their way into the community. And in this case, you just have to do two things. You have to ignore them and you have to block them. Don't engage. Remember, you can't argue with an idiot. They'll just drag you down to their level and then they'll beat you with experience. That's what my dad used to always say, and it's true. All of that aside, what does balanced feedback look like? Well, for me, it's about opening up with the things that you liked about the story. So start off by saying good things. I liked this. I liked that. I like this character. I like the way you wrote this. So on and so forth. And be specific about it. Don't just be like, yeah, it's pretty good. You know, like be specific. Talk about specific things that show that you actually sat down and read it. Trust me, it goes a long way towards making people feel seen and making them feel like their work is, you know, actually being enjoyed. Now, that's the thing. Balanced feedback does involve gassing up the author, as the kids like to say. But that's okay because they did good work, especially if you enjoyed stuff. Once you've kind of led with the good things, then you can come in with some of the stuff that you think should have been or could have been better. And that's the thing. You're not here to just say, well, that's bad, and then move on. You need to highlight specific things that could be improved the same way that you would highlight something you liked, right? So, and you need to come at it from the angle of, well, this could be improved by doing X, Y, Z. It's not bad. It just could, you know, be better if you did this. And it's important to make that distinction because otherwise you're no better than the trolls. You know what I mean? So focus on things that are actionable, not broad stuff like I didn't like it. Provide a suggestion of how to fix it as well, especially if you have an idea of how it can be improved. A great example is a writer on Substack that I have had the pleasure of knowing for a couple of weeks now, I think, named Hazel Allen. Hazel and I have exchanged feedback on our stories multiple times, and what I love about Hazel's feedback is that it's always super balanced, and it comes from a place of trying to help me do better and improve my craft, and that's what it's all about. So, you know, the other day I was talking to Hazel and they even said how much they appreciate the fact that whenever I critique something of theirs, that I offer a solution, which is why I mentioned that just now. Critiquing someone's work isn't a bad thing. You just have to go about it the right way. And, you know, especially something that I've always noticed, and I noticed this about myself too, is that writers, especially new writers, are very, they don't have a thick skin built up just yet. And so if you come at them and you are harsh or you're mean, you might, without even realizing it, shut down somebody's desire to write. And that is the worst possible scenario. Do not let that happen, okay? Which is why you need to be careful and balanced with your feedback. Because if you're responsible for some writer not putting their art out there, then that's honestly probably the worst sin you can commit. as a writer, okay? So just be cognizant, be mindful, and when you're giving feedback, make sure it's balanced because, like I said, it's even more important for people who are struggling to get the courage to put out their art to begin with. If you shut them down, they're just going to go right back into hiding, and we don't want that. The world needs more writers, not less. All right, next up is my weekly Substack soapbox rant. I love these because I get to talk about something that drives me nuts. And as anyone who's talked to me in the last week will know, I've had a little something called internet problems. So guess what? We're ranting about internet problems. You see, we need the internet to function as writers. It's just a fact of life. And for many of us, myself included, the internet's also a little something that we use to do, our job. So, when you're having issues, it throws off everything, and it makes you look bad. I'm speaking from experience here. I've been working from home for over 10 years now, and I don't have any patience left for internet troubles. And what I really don't have patience for is crappy internet service providers who just refuse to help. Where I am in Virginia, we only have one internet provider, and it's Cox, spelled C-O-X. Okay, but just in case you're wondering, because of the name, yes, they are a bunch of dicks. They just constantly refuse to help, and all they want to do is upsell me on faster internet, and I'm like, why would I pay you more when what I already have isn't working? And this has been a problem for years since I moved here. It's so infuriating because last time this happened, they had to keep coming out and they were like, it's this thing, boom. And then the problem would continue. Then they would send somebody else out and it's like, well, no, actually it's this thing. Okay, we're good. And then they, it would mess up again. They would come back out. And this all culminated a few years ago in them just showing up with a crew and like digging up half my yard and ripping out all the cables and putting in new ones. And I'll tell you, it worked after that. But my grass took a while to grow back. So I appreciate that. God. I'm not looking forward to talking to them again, but I'm going to have to keep pushing them because it's like I have to have my internet. And I know you don't want to help me or for whatever reason you're just not interested in helping me, but you're a company. I'm paying for a service. Let's make this happen, okay? So if you're listening, internet provider whose name rhymes with docs, please just do me a solid and send somebody out here to help me instead of gaslighting me every time I try to ask you for help, making me think that it's my fault that my internet's not working. Yeah, I really love that. God. Anyway, that's the end of my rant for this week. Okay, super short final section here because we are almost double the time of a standard episode. Again, if you made it this far, thank you. So, coming up this week, to give you a preview of the next week of my publication here, we're going to keep up with the Flash Fiction February, and I'm actually thinking that at random points over this next week, we're going to drop 2 different wildcard prompts using my girlfriend Sarah's prompts. So stay tuned for that. They are super unique, and they'll really make you think outside the box. This week, I'm also posting some new poetry and flash fictions, obviously as part of Flash Fiction February, but I also expect to be starting, hopefully, on a new creative writing gig that I just got word that I'm being hired for. I'm so excited to talk about this, but I need to review the contract and sign it, and then I'm supposed to be getting some sort of social media materials that I can use to talk about the role. So stay tuned. Maybe by next week's podcast I can go into more detail, but this is an incredibly cool opportunity. I'm so excited for it. It will be something where I'm working on it part-time alongside my day job. It's not enough to just up and quit my day job, but hey, it's a step towards a creative writing full-time kind of scenario. So to all my fans who have helped me get this far, you're the reason why they wanted to work with me. I know you are. Obviously my work speaks for itself, but we're also looking for people that had some sort of following. And so I owe this to you guys as much as I do to myself for all the work that I've put in. It takes 2 to tango. So stay tuned. Really excited to hear about this, and hopefully you'll be just as excited as I am when you find out how you get to read some stories from me that are on a new platform and presented in a really cool new way. And that's as much as I should give away. I also had a few people this past week ask me about doing a voiceover / narration article. And first of all, I love that people are asking about my voice acting and narration because I feel like I'm a super amateur. That being said, I have been working on passion projects with my friend James, who's an animator, for over 20 years now that we've known each other. So I've had more than my fair share of practice. I'm just not... I don't really have like a demo reel or anything like that in terms of voice acting because I've never been hired to do it before. So this is just me doing it on my own. But since people seem to enjoy how I do it, yes, I do plan on writing an article this week about tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years when it comes to podcasting, narration, doing voices and impersonations, stuff like that. And I do plan on narrating the article as well, so I can give you some specific examples of what that looks like in action. Also coming up this next week, we'll have some more Devine stories. Stay tuned for 2 in particular. The Sunken Citadel is the first one, and the other one you want to look out for is the Flames of Redemption. Both of these have very cool settings, and fans will catch a lot of cool lore in them, so be on the lookout for those. Alright, well, looking at my unedited audio, we're coming up on 40 minutes here. It'll come down a little bit once I edit, but that's a long episode. So let me just say one last time that I'm insanely grateful for all of you, my subscribers, my listeners, and the friends, honestly, that I've made. I am incredibly grateful. I'm blown away that this is, after so many years of kind of shouting into the void, suddenly being surrounded by so many talented and incredible human beings is a feeling beyond description. I don't think there's a way that I can describe it. Even if I spent the rest of my life trying to come up with the right words, I don't think it'd ever be quite right. So let me just say thank you, because that's all I really can do. And I'm really excited to see where all this goes. And I'm excited to see all of you succeed right alongside me. And I'm hoping that all of my support, the likes, the late nights reading and catching up on stories, the restacks, the reviews, I'm hoping that it helps. Not only for you and your morale, I want you to get excited about somebody else reading your work, obviously, but I'm hoping that all the restacking that I do is helping you get some actual reads and subscribers, because like I said, at the end of the day, I really want you to succeed as much as I do, and I truly mean that. So let's get back to it, huh? I hope you all have a wonderful, safe, and productive week of writing. Stay tuned for more daily prompts because it's still Flash Fiction February. And this is Bradley Ramsey, signing off.